All right, this is the Women's Rap Workshop, and I have two speakers, Erin and Betty, who will be sharing their experience, strength, and hope with us. And with that, we will begin.
I'm Erin, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Erin.
And I'm so want to thank the committee for asking me to speak. And every time I come to a convention, I think about the very first convention that I went to, and it was MACNA. For people that aren't from here, that's the Midtown area of Narcotics Anonymous in Georgia. And I think I had like 30 days clean. And I can remember going to it was the afternoon speaker on Saturday, and I don't remember her name, I don't remember what she looked like, but she opened the meeting and she was like, "Welcome to NA, we are in the miracle making business." And she said that, and it was so profound, and so I told myself, I was like, you know what, one day I'm going to get up and I'm going to be a speaker and I'm going to say that same shit. And so I probably won't ever be a speaker, but here I am in workshops, so I was like, I'm going to say that shit. But I say it because when she said that, I was like, at 30 days clean, I was like, you know what, I am a miracle. I am a miracle for sure. And I knew at that point, I wasn't sure if I could stay clean, but I damn sure knew that I wanted to at that point. And that's like, I think that's when like the first seed was planted. This is a women's rap. I'm not real sure exactly what a women's rap is. I don't think I even have a topic. So, I didn't really know what I was going to talk about until I was just in the speaker meeting and Wanda was speaking. And she started talking about the women in her life. And I'm like, this is a women's rap. I can talk about the women in my life, and I think about, when I first came in and how beaten and broken I was. Like I was a broke down mess, and I was living in a camper in my mom's backyard, and I had just gotten out of jail because as addicts, that's what we do, we go to jail, and how hopeless I was, and I didn't have any friends. The only woman that I had in my life who had anything to do with my life was my mom, and she caused a lot of negative in my life for sure. And that was the only woman that I had to look back on when I think about women. And so I come in here and they're like, you got to get with women. And that's really hard for women, like I get sponsees and I talk to women in meetings, especially newcomers, and they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with women. And I think as addicts, we all feel that way when we come in. And I was just telling Kathy before the meeting started, like, I couldn't imagine my life today without women in it. For sure. I certainly couldn't stay clean without the women in my life. But, thinking back to first coming in and, thinking about how I was going to get one more day clean. How am I going to get one more day clean? And so, a couple of women, like, latched onto me and they, showed me how to live and taught me how to act like a lady and how I should dress when I go to meetings, because I didn't know that kind of stuff. I still have a pair of shorts that I showed my husband. I'm like, I used to wear these to meetings, and he was like, oh my God, like, I wish I could have been in that meeting. Like, you wore that to a meeting. I'm like, I know, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm so embarrassed that I wore that to a meeting, because as women, when we come in, we don't know how to act, like, we don't know how to dress, we don't know how to act. We've got, like, that street mentality. All we're looking for is what we can get out of people, and I had to have women in my life that said, you don't have to act like that anymore. You don't have to act like that anymore. We're here to help you. We don't want anything from you. We just want you to stay clean, And this program is just, it's amazing. It is truly amazing. I'll have 6 years clean in June if I make it. And this is coming from someone that couldn't get 6 days. I couldn't get 6 hours. I struggled for a long time. I mean, it has taken me 10 years to get 6 years, basically. I could not get it until I realized, that I had to stick with some women in my life, because there are women in this fellowship right now that have stayed clean a long time. They've got a lot of recovery, and they showed me how to live, and I need them in my life. And I need that in my life for sure. I think about where I've come from and what I have now, and like all the gifts of recovery that have given me. In my first couple of years of going to meetings, and I love to go to gratitude meetings because I'd always be like, oh, I can share about gratitude, you know, and I would list like all these physical things that I was grateful for, like that I had a place to live, you know, that was mine, and I had a car to drive, and it had insurance, and I had a driver's license, and I was clean. But now when I think about, you know, all the gratitude that I have, it's not all that physical stuff. Like, I'm so grateful that I'm not crazy in the head anymore. You know, I'm so grateful that that I don't want to steal everybody's shit that I come in contact with. And I'm so grateful that for the steps in my life that have helped free me from my past. You know, that's the stuff that I'm grateful for today. And, you know, I'm grateful for all that physical stuff too. You know, everything that I have today, you know, I prayed for that shit. You know, I was telling someone, I'm going to try not to pass this hard. I was telling someone last year when I was here, I always register for the next year while I'm here because it's cheaper, and I just do it to try to give back. And so last year when I registered, I'm like, I'm going to register, but I'm going to be pregnant by next year, and I'm not going to come. And, you know, and I spoke that into existence, and I had a baby 10 weeks ago. So. All right. And that is all because of this program, you know, because before I got clean, no man could even stand to look at me, you know, and now I have a husband that, you know, I have a child with that I prayed really hard for, you know, and that's what this program does. You know, the only promise we have is freedom for active addiction, but I promise you, if you stay clean enough, some good shit is going to happen to you. You know, I promise it is going to happen to you, and it has definitely happened for me. You know, like I bought a house, like Junkie Me bought a house. It's my shit. You know, like I never thought I could do that. You know, and it's all from the program of Narcotics Anonymous. It's amazing, and it's only because, you know, I came in and I got with some women, and I made the decision not to use, and I did some step work, and I let some people get to know me, and I became transparent, you know, and the longer I stay clean, I see that you know, that can become a struggle for me sometimes, you know, because I get embarrassed, like some of the feelings that I have, I get embarrassed and say I'm not supposed to have those feelings. I got almost 6 years clean. I'm not supposed to want to use. You know, and there have been times where, you know, sometimes I want to use. I just had a baby. I was in some pain, you know, and I really struggled. And relapse was really, really close in my future for me, you know, and I have to stay vigilant. You know, I have to keep up recovery in my life, and sometimes that's just struggle the longer I stay clean. You know, it's very easy for me to get complacent. It's very easy for me not to go to meetings. You know, and it's, you know, I have sponsees that are brand spanking new and don't like to go to meetings. I'm like, you think that's going to get any better? No, it's not going to get any better. You know, like sometimes, you know, it's a struggle. And that's why I like coming to conventions too. It helps like kickstart my recovery. It reminds me of why I'm here. It reminds me of the feeling that I had when I had 30 days clean. It reminds me of all the people that I have in my life. I live in an area where I didn't get clean in, and so I've got the people in the area that I got clean at, and then I got the people in the area where I live now, you know, because it's in the book, it's in our picture, you know, broad of the base, the higher point of freedom, and that's what I want. I came in here because I wanted to be free, you know, and so it, you know, all I can really say that I feel today is I just feel grateful. You know, I'm really grateful that I chose to give Narcotics Anonymous a chance. I'm grateful that I chose to get a sponsor who cared about me and who was willing to work the steps with me. I'm grateful that I chose to work the steps. I'm grateful that God puts people in my life that I get to sponsor now, and that's how I give back. You know, since I've got clean, I'm really struggling now because since I got clean, I always had a service position. Always done, like when I had like 60 days clean, I started doing H&I because the very first time I went to detox, I don't remember really anything about detox, but I remember H&I coming in and telling me how they stay clean, and I was like, I'm gonna do that shit one day. I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna tell these people how to stay clean, and that's what I wanted to do, and I did that for a long time, and that really helped me stay clean. And you know, and then I've had other service positions, but now I have a 10-week-old baby, and I can't take a service position. So now I'm like having to go to the basics, and I'm like, giving newcomers rides and, you know, stuff like that. Because, I mean, service helps keep me clean. And it's always helped me stay clean. And I don't want to see what it's like to not do service. So that's why, you know, it's really important to me. And there were women here when I got here that I needed. And so there's newcomers coming in, y'all, that need us. We need to be here for them. You know, we need to let them know that that this is a safe place and that we're here to help them for sure. You know, that is our duty as women in this program to show them, hey, this is how we did it and this is how you can do it. You know, that's about all I've got. I'm just really, I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm really grateful that all of y'all are here. I was kind of nervous when I was getting started, but I'm like, I'm in a women's meeting. Like, that's nothing. Like, I don't have to impress them women. Like, you know, they've been where I've been. And, you know, and that was real important to me, too. When I got here, I knew that I was an addict. It was very obvious from the way I was living my life and what was going on in my life. But I needed to hear y'all tell me about all the fucked up shit y'all had done, because I needed to know that y'all had done that shit, too. You know, I was pretty eat up with guilt and shame when I got here because of the mother that I had been to my child. And that's what y'all did. You were like, you know what, I haven't been the greatest mom, and this is what I did, but I got clean, and this is how I'm a good mom now, you know. And so now when people say me, they can also associate with, hey, she's a good mom, you know, and that's really important. But I love y'all. Thanks for letting me share.
All right, Miss Betty.
Hi, my name is Betty, and I'm a grateful recovering addict.
Hey.
First of all, I want to thank GRCNA for asking me to share, for taking a chance on me, because I'm subject to be crazy at any moment. You know, they tell me I suffer from bipolar and all that other stuff, so I might go off there, you know. But I want to thank my predecessors, the women that was here before I got here, you know. I come from a different area, too. I come from St. Louis, Missouri, so I always pictured, if I ever got this opportunity to sit here and share, that I would be sharing in front of those women, because that was where my beginning and my recovery came from. When I got here to Georgia, I already had 12 years clean, you know, but through the grace of God, you know, He has allowed me to be in a sponsorship network, you know, where my sponsor has a sponsor, her sponsor have a sponsor, and you know what? They all in this room, you know. And I just thank God for that, because Aaron, thank you for sharing, you know, because I got a lot out of you. Because what I got was a lot of what it reminded me what it was like when I first got here. You know, through the grace of God, He has allowed me to be clean from January the 15th, 1995 until today. And, man, I'm extremely grateful for that, you know, because, see, I was 32 when I got here. You know, and I had all of those experiences when I first got here, when they said don't get in a relationship for 1 year. You know, I brought all of those old behaviors in here with me. You know, I didn't know my picker was broke, and I would just pick you because I like you and thought you looked good and whatever. And then I found out I got you from the same place I was going to, the crazy house. So, you know, so I learned, you know, by trial and error, and through a lot of physical and emotional pain, you know, just coming in here picking somebody because I was lonely and felt like I needed to be attached to someone else in order to be a woman, you know, to make myself feel like I had somebody, you know, and I did that for a lot of years in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, man. It took me a long time. My first sponsor, Roy Jean, man, I thank her, I love her. She sponsored me for 10 years, you know, and the first time I got in a relationship and somebody decided they didn't want to be in a relationship, she told me, she said, you can go in the rooms and you can share about you, but you cannot character assassinate that man in the room, because he got to recover in the same rooms that you got to recover in, you know, and I still stick by that today. You know, I ain't got to come in here and tear you down. you know, to get where I need to get the help that I need, you know. And I'm extremely grateful for that because, like they say, the basics, everything they taught me in the beginning, I still do today. I don't leave my house unless I have a plan. If I don't have somewhere to go and know what I'm doing when I get there, I ain't going. You know, because they told me that's when I can get in trouble. When things, I can deviate from what I need to do because I'm just leaving on willy-nilly. I'm just going, you know. And today I can't afford to do that because I suffer from a disease that want to kill me and want to get me out there caught up in somebody else's mess I don't have no business being in, you know. Man, I like to read this. This book been saving my life, man. Living Clean, the journey continues because illness. Many of us suffer from diseases other than addiction. Some may be a direct consequence of our addiction, other things that happened while we were using. Other may have nothing to do with the disease of addiction, but certainly impact our recovery. Sometimes it seems like they take over our entire lives. Learn to use the tools we gain in NA to cope with our other challenges is part of living life on life's terms, you know. And I've had to learn to do that, you know. My children now, you know, early recovery, that was my issues. You know, they all stemmed around what was going on with me and the kids, and, you know, me and them going to family therapy, doing group therapy, and all this other kind of stuff to learn how to live with each other. You know, today they 34, 38, and 39, so that ain't my issue today. You know, that's just not my issue today. You know, my issue today is learning how to live with me and the different changes that go on in my life. You know, the different experiences. Like I said, I was 32 when I got here. I'm 55 now. You know, so a lot of things have changed. When I was 37, I was 3.5 years clean and had gotten a job back out there in the work field, got some education, gotten off welfare, and did all these kind of things. And I'm thinking I'm headed in the right direction. You know, God has given me a life worth living, and I'm on the move. I'm going, and I'm doing these things. I'm working in facilities, helping other recovering addicts and stuff like that. And I went to work one night, and when I got off the next morning, my friend took me to the hospital. And I was diagnosed with an illness called sarcoidosis. And they told me, they said, you got a textbook case. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that part, textbook case. They say, you got chronic sarcoidosis, so you can't work anymore. And I'm like, people done lost their damn mind. You know, I just got back out there in the work field, so I don't want to hear you telling me I can't work anymore. So that threw me in a situation where instead of me getting up and having somewhere to go every day, I'm getting up and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not getting dressed. Everybody else in the house gone. I'm upstairs. I got a dartboard on the wall so I can throw darts all day long, learn how to do that, but I went into a deep depression. And when I went into that deep depression, I didn't know how deep I was in there. You know, but my sponsor at that time, you know, she used to call me, I used to call her. And if the only thing I had to say was that I don't want to use today, that was good enough for her, you know. And everybody moved out. The person I was in a relationship moved out. My daughter moved out, and when my daughter moved out, I remember sliding down the refrigerator and just screaming, hollering, and praying, God, please help me. Just help me make it through this, you know. And I didn't know that when we ask God for help, we can't tell him the form of help to send us, you know. And I didn't know that when I went to my next doctor's appointment, he said, I need to keep you for a couple of days. So I'm thinking he put me in the regular room. He put me on the psych ward, you know. And while I was out there using, I didn't go to the psych ward. And I was crazy as hell, you know. But to end up going to the psych ward clean, you know, I didn't know that some of the medications that they had put me on was causing me to have a chemical imbalance in my brain. And that's why everybody done left the house, because I'm crazy. I'm crying 1 minute and I'm screaming and hollering the next minute, and I'm cooking food and I'm throwing everything in it and don't nobody want to eat. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So everybody left. But when I went to the psych ward, he adjusted my medication, and my sponsor called me. She said, you know what? This is your 4th year clean, 4th anniversary clean. She said, you might be on the psych ward, but you sure in the hell ain't using it today. And that was something to be grateful for, and she told me, she said, that's not something to keep to yourself. That's something to share with other recovering addicts, that we can go to the psych ward and make it up out of there. Yes. But today I know I don't have to go there, right. Because I just had an experience about a couple of months ago where I wasn't sleeping because I had ran out of my medication, and it had went on for about 4 or 5 days. And then I had got in that manic state, and I was just moving around doing everything. I couldn't sleep, but I was manic, and today, through the grace of God, I have a healthcare worker that come and help take care of me every day, Monday through Fridays, from 9 in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And look, we be on the go. And she just watched me, and she didn't get afraid or start talking about what I should or need to do. I just let her know what was going on with me. She went and got my medication. And I went right on to sleep and slept about 7 to 8 hours before I woke up. And that was what I needed to do. See, I'm grateful today that they say that, like they talked about when we first get here, that medicine, psychiatry, and religion couldn't get us clean. But those are some of the tools that I have to use today to stay in this process, and when I have to use them, I use them, and I'm not afraid, I'm not ashamed to tell somebody, look, this is what I have to do. If I got to go see the psychiatrist, I need to go sit down and talk to him because you don't have time to listen to me finish talk about what I need to talk about. So I need to go somewhere else, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to have a sponsor that don't tell me you got it easy. You don't have to keep working the steps or do whatever because your illness and you get sick sometimes. She said, you got to work that step, baby. She said, it ain't got nothing to do with it. You got to work them steps. And that's what I do. I work my steps, Today I'm on the process of doing another 4th step. And she got me doing the 4th step on family relationships. And that took me way back to some of those childhood relationships, because I had never did a 4th step with my siblings, and my children and stuff. And I find myself crying and praying and crying while I'm writing, because those old feelings come back up, and those feelings of, man, I'm the baby girl, so it was a lot of things they didn't tell me. They did protect me and say, well, you need to go over here. They say, no, you go over there and play because we don't want to babysit you. And I got involved in some of those them little sexual relationships that you weren't supposed to know nothing about while you in grammar school. And getting involved in some of those, my self-esteem was so low, and practically non-existent, because I would get involved with the little boys that would have sex with you in the hallway, but they wouldn't take you around the corner to meet their family. You was that girl, and they always had somebody else that they showed off as my girlfriend, and those issues plagued me throughout my life and in my recovery. I got to the point of saying I wanted to be involved in relationships with somebody that had somebody, so I didn't have to worry about having to deal with the whole thing. But I got into a relationship with one of them men that had those characteristics that I saw that I liked, that was, for a man. But the only thing about it was he was going home doing the business with somebody else. Me and him was just having fun. And I told myself, I don't want to get in no relationship like that anymore. I do not want to be your side piece. Not again. Not again. And I refuse to do that to myself today. Today, you could have never told me. I done been in a relationship with men, women, Okay, I've been around. I done took myself there. Okay? No. But today, through the grace of God today, I've been celibate for the last 3.5 years, man. You know, and that was something you never could have told me that I could accomplish or would want to do. Because I always felt that need. I got to have that attachment. I got to belong to somebody else. But you know, God said it's good enough that I belong to him. Okay? And it's good enough that I belong to the other women in this fellowship. Because, man, they told me when I first got here that the men was going to pat me on my ass, but the women was going to help save my life. That's going to help save my life. You know, and y'all still helping save my life today. Because, you know, I go anywhere. I love Narcotics Anonymous. I be going on the cane. I be going on the walker. I had the oxygen tanks, and the only thing I say, I'm keep on going. You know, and my sponsor, she loves to tell me, yeah, you know you go too much. You need to go somewhere and sit down. So after this convention, you're going to have to go home, and you're going to have to rest for a couple of days. And I'm going to do exactly what she say. Because that's the same thing my daughter told me. Now, Mom, you can't go to that convention and hang out all weekend and know that you going to be in some pain. But see, y'all told me I need to bring whatever I need with me. I need to be prepared wherever I go with whatever I need. You know, and y'all prepared me to sit up here today. The women's in this room prepared me to be able to sit here and talk about me. And talk about this life-saving program of Narcotics Anonymous, you know. Because what I know is there's a lot of people out there that need this program. But they told me it was for the people that want it. That you got to have that desire, and you got to want to come up in here and be a part of Narcotics Anonymous. Be willing to give back what was so freely given to you, you know. And I'm just grateful, you know, because I got relatives that need this program, man. You know, and they need it to the point when I'm around them, you want to still offer me something to drink after 22 years, and I'm looking at you like, what the hell? You know, what the hell? You know, like you don't know. You know, but you refuse to accept the fact that I needed help so you don't have to look at you. You don't have to look at what's going on in your life. But I'm grateful, man. I was scared I was going to get up here and didn't know what to talk about. let me tell y'all, I just moved. This say the journey continues. I have been living with my sister for the last 5 years. And I haven't listened to my children. I have been listening to the doctor. And my sister say, well, you can't live on your own no more. You got to always live with somebody. Because you can't trust being at home by yourself, but God. But God. I moved into an apartment 2 weeks ago. And it's a handicap accessible apartment. And I got aides to help me so I can live on my own. You know, and that fear had set in. And that complacency. I had got so comfortable at my sister's house, I'm enjoying your luxury. So I don't have to go out and try to get some of my own again. You know, but this program had taught me over the years, I haven't been homeless since I got here. I was living in shelter when I got clean. You know, and God has made it where I haven't had to be homeless ever since then. So going on this journey now of being on my own opened up some whole new opportunities for me. You know, and I don't know where it's going to lead, but I'm going. You know, I ain't going to stop, I'm going. Like they say, the journey continues. I'm going to keep on going in the process of recovery. You know, I'd like to thank y'all for being here and allowing me to share.